Hey, so what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario.
And Dope Swanner.
And Daniel, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I got a little color. I'm looking a little red from being outside this morning, but I feel great. How you doing today?
Oh, nice. I mean, I'm doing all right. Thankfully, I don't have to have any of the color because I have that baked in, like the partial Arab skin and all that stuff going on.
Struggle is real due to being a freaking Europeans, like Swedish people. I've got that delicate skin, you know what I'm
Oh, right,
saying?
right. But yeah, today we're not talking about skin. And in case you don't know, this is ModChat, where this is a monthly podcast where Daniel and I talk about whatever the hell we kind of want to when it comes to modding. And we kind of try and stay on topic. And sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. But this episode is episode 16. So, dude, we've been doing this for now 16 months straight.
Crazy, dude.
Yep. Yeah. Anyways, today we do have a guest on the line here. And unnamed guest, would you like to name yourself?
The Canadian man.
Okay, the Canadian man.
Love it.
No, I'm STiPO. Maybe one person out there knows me.
I'm hoping he watches this and just right now loses his shit.
He's like, "Oh my God, it's STiPO!" But yeah, we had STiPO on here because he himself is a modder, mostly with Dead Rising and such. And I guess STiPO, is there anything you want to plug, like your channel, how we got you on here, anything like that, and a little bit of what you do?
Well, I don't want to gloat or boast about anything, but I'm STiPO on YouTube. I just mod Dead Rising, basically all I really do, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, dude,
Thanks
no
for
problem.
being here, man.
We're hoping this will be a fun hour. So
For sure.
with that, I mean, I brought STiPO on. I asked him about this because with the overall topic that we're kind of trying to, talk about here and everything will be, reversing games, all that stuff, and, just modifying them and even just, any type of research in them. Now,
hmm
previously, we did have P2P Online or Borman on here who talked about archiving games and such. And I know STiPO's done that quite a bit with Dead Rising mostly, but you've also been into, kind of like the development scene, not so much developing games, but more just, messing around with dev kits and then using those to reverse the game and everything like that, and playing around with debug builds and such.
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess first off, like really what got you started on that?
Well, I originally started with a JTAG. I picked up my JTAG. I drove 2 hours to get it, and finally got something to run unsigned code. And I started messing around with Halo. It was something I always wanted to do. Saw some videos, saw some people, what you could do with Halo, and I said I want to try that. So I eventually got into it, and I didn't have a capture card at the time, so I wasn't recording videos. So I was just messing around with Halo, and then I kind of moved around, and I got into Forza Motorsport modding, and eventually I kind of found my shtick where I found that you could mod Dead Rising, which for the longest time I didn't think would even be possible. And eventually I got an Elgato, and I said, hey, I could probably record some stuff with Dead Rising, and it just kind of, I wouldn't say skyrocketed, but it kind of took motion. It kind of blew up a little bit, and here I am today doing the same thing.
But with that, I mean, you were messing with different games and everything. Where Halo was kind of the first I touched as well too. But you messed with Halo and Forza. But like, what were the thing I was wanting to ask? What you just said was what was making you think that you couldn't mod Dead Rising?
Well, you see, I'm currently the only person who's modding Dead Rising. So if you were to go on YouTube and search Dead Rising mods, you might find some kind of game save modification someone's done with a JTAG. But besides that, you're not going to find any tutorials that I haven't written or something. You're not going to find any info on how to mod Dead Rising. So I just assumed that this game was locked down. The encryption on this game was probably next level, and it probably wasn't moddable. And when I got into it, it wasn't moddable. There was no tools to decompile files, so I had to start small with executable modifications, which are pretty difficult, but you could kind of learn it and get into it. And that was the only way I was able to mod Dead Rising. And then eventually, some people started to help me out and make tools for decompiling files. And the larger my channel grew, the more people came along and said, "Hey, I can make you a texture compiler, or I can make you a model compiler." And now Dead Rising has become a pretty open source game, I'd like to say.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
but then even with that, I guess, because I know Daniel and I have kind of talked about this kind of on and off the record before. We've said, there's things that for example, like him and I, we've done the hardware side of modifications, like modifying retail consoles and all that
Hmm.
stuff, and then mess with trainers and menus here and there. But I guess like where would be even a good place to start, where like is that's kind of been the thing with us, we're like, where would you even start with something like that?
That's a good question. um, really start with something easy like Halo, because Halo is so there's so many tutorials online, and everyone does start with Halo. I mean, I know you guys did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not me, not me.
Oh,
What did you start
I've
with?
actually never to this day modded Halo.
oh
Call of
wow.
Duty.
Okay.
That
Okay.
was actually I am one of those kids. The reason why I originally wanted to get into Xbox modding was so that I could have a lobby and have God mode and piss people off. That legitimately is the reason why. And then I mean, obviously after I got it, I that lost interest in that completely because I was like, this is dumb and went a different way. But no, originally, it was MW2 and COD 4 that made me want to get into it, mess around with it. I hadn't even
I did
seen
that
I
too.
yeah, I never had an original Xbox, and I did play a little bit of Halo 3, but I never was even that crazy about it. It was for me, it was Call of Duty. So, sorry to disappoint, but that's what it was for me, guys.
No worries. I was gonna say now thinking about it would probably be more Call of Duty here and there, but I know for
Yeah,
example
that's
like
true.
several people I talked to, I kept it offline because I didn't have Xbox Live at the time. But myself and several other friends, like the things that we had looked into was like how the hell do you do like custom maps on Halo 2 and things like that, and like flying around in God mode and all that stuff. We thought that was cool as hell. So that's kind of like the generation before, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, but then even I guess yeah, kind of going back to the topic here, because you're saying starting with Halo or anything like that. But I guess even aside from that, then just like any other starter tips or anything, because I know you actually go into the games, not the game's code, I guess, but like the game's files, rip them apart, modify them from there, everything like that.
Right. Um, well, there's two kinds of mods you can do to a game, right? I mean, there's two main categories. There's modifying the files, which could either be as easy as just poking around in the folders, or or not. And then there's the executable modding, and the files are just the files. I mean, they could either hold scripts, they could hold models and textures, and all that could be tinkered with. The executable actually pieces all of that together, so it takes every file and it kind of hubs it together into one thing, and also contains some data and stuff. So if you were trying to mod, I don't know, a player's texture or something to make him look like he's wearing, a pink shirt or something ridiculous, you would mod the files. Of course, you would take apart the files and edit the textures. Now, if you wanted to mod something a little bit more advanced, like have infinite ammo, that's usually going to be something executable related. And that's where it kind of becomes a little bit more advanced, because executable modding, although there is tutorials, it's not as straightforward as opening up the folder of your game and just peeking around. So definitely the best place to start with modding games, if you're lucky, like Halo and Call of Duty, is just poking around in the files and changing stuff. Not every game has to be modded through the executable. Um, so yeah,
Mm-hmm. And then even with that, you might have the game like crash or anything like that.
of course, of course.
Yeah. So I guess even with that, then if you're finding things like, what are some of the, I guess what's kind of like been one of the most interesting things you found in a retail game?
Unused files,
Okay.
I'd say.
And every game has
Definitely.
those. Like you see, like for I know,
Oh
like
yeah,
GoldenEye, for example, has like an entire test map that was hidden in there,
oh
and
for
it has,
sure.
and technically GoldenEye has what like 20 games on it because it has like a bunch of ZX Spectrum games hidden
Yep,
on there.
yep. Yeah, no, you could find a lot of interesting things. I mean, you could take a game as weird or as obscure as like Kung Fu Panda or something, and you could take it apart and you could find a test map on it or something, or you could find a debug menu if you're really good at executable. And that's mainly my drive. Is see, I like to document beta and alpha versions of the games and try to figure out what changed and what became the final product, and try to understand why the hell they did that. And in turn, you eventually start to find some shit in the files that are really interesting, and exactly, test maps or test textures, etc. And finding those is like crack, just finding really cool things.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny to think about too when you see it from a developer's standpoint, where it's like I'm pretty sure the developers, they didn't care about anything like that. That was all for testing. And then it's like,
Yeah.
why would any end user want this? And then like all the end users like, no, this is all the stuff we want. This is awesome. All these hidden
Yeah.
weapons and everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to your Dead Rising modding, do you have to like? Is it only for Xboxes that have like RGH and RJTAG and JTAGs, or can you do you mess with like game save modding at all?
I've done one game save mod, which I've kind of left that scene as it's not advanced enough for me. But I've done game save related stuff, but mostly the most things that you're going to find on my channel, you're going to need some kind of unsigned code machine. Um,
Got you.
yeah,
Reason being, when you're saying that game save is not advanced enough, is that the capabilities of what you can do with game save exploits versus actual unsigned code is probably pretty limited, right?
right, that's correct.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. And then, I mean, again, when you said too, like when you're kind of poking around in the code, how some of the stuff obviously is textures, which I mean, textures are just really what image files, correct?
Hmm, hmm.
Um, okay, well, when you're actually messing with, like I know things are like infinite ammo and God mode and stuff like that. At that point, you're actually messing with variables, like right? It's like
Right.
actually that is that. Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Because I mean, I haven't messed with it too much, but I do remember. Once upon a time when I was looking into a little tutorial on how to create your own Call of Duty trainer, which again was like probably 4 years ago, that it was something like that. Basically, we opened up and there were certain files you went into, and just even by changing like numeric variables, would ultimately lead to changing clip sizes and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Every game is
Okay,
different. Every game is coded different. Some games have like the main hard coded piece of the game could be in the files, and in Dead Rising's case it's such like an obscure way of doing it, but in Dead Rising's case all of the hard coded stuff, ammo, how hard a weapon hits a zombie, etc., that's all executable stuff. But not every game's like that. Some games you could find how much health the player has within a script file in the game's files, which is going to be much easier to modify. So it depends on the game.
so definitely have a noobish question for you, but since you're here, I'm gonna ask anyway. I understand that an executable file obviously is like a file that like runs something, correct? I mean,
Mhm.
that's essentially okay. Um, what is the main difference? Like, okay, why why would someone, because I mean, again, like let's say you have software on a computer, you've got your install directory, typically you have like one executable file and the rest of it's all just files and folders that coexist along with the executable to make it run correctly. Why would why would there be more than one executable within? Do you know, like, is there any benefit, or is there any like reasoning for doing such thing, or it's just I mean, there's got to be something behind it.
I mean, if you're thinking about like in the case where Modern Warfare has like a default and an MP default kind of thing,
Okay, yeah, okay.
usually it's just developer preference. I mean, you could pretty much put everything into one executable. I really don't know the reasoning behind, Infinity Ward or Treyarch's reasoning for multiple executables, but there's always a reason for it. Maybe they wanted to bring the file size down on one executable. Maybe it was lagging a bit with too much stuff in one executable. They wanted to make it
Got
go
you.
into a second. I don't know.
Well, I do know that like on what is it? Either Black Ops or MW2. I have it on PC, and when you're downloading it from Steam, it's actually two different downloads. Like the EXE for multiplayer, you can just download that and strictly play multiplayer. You don't even have to download the campaign. So I mean, like in that instance, it does save file size if
Hmm.
you just want the multiplayer versus having both campaign and multiplayer. So yeah, I'm sure.
For
Like I
sure.
said, I'm sure there's more to it. I just was wondering if there's something that's pretty obvious that I'm not seeing, or whether there's not really a set reasoning for why someone would want to do that over a different
Yeah.
method.
I don't know. It's it really
Got you.
it's all developer preference. I guess.
Yeah. Well, also, then another question is in terms of when you are actually going into these executables and script files, what do you use as your code editor?
So an executable can't really be read like a text document or something, and that's
Uh huh.
because an executable is compiled. It's the same thing like an exe on a PC. It's highly compiled, and you can't actually read it. But there are some programs that could kind of interpret the information. It's the big difference from read and interpret, I guess. IDA, which is a program on PC, could actually take machine code, which is what executables are compressed in, and it could kind of read it back in a more or less human understandable format.
Uh huh.
And then game files are coded in anything. It's developer preference. You could have XML files, which if you've ever dealt with an XML file, it's pretty readable. It could be open in a text editor, you know.
Those are pretty much plain English at that point.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And then you could have some things that are really compressed, and developers could make their own compression method, and then you need to whip up some kind of program that could decompile it, and it gets more advanced with different games, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know
Huh.
when I'd looked into it before, at least hexing and all that. Because I've hexed a few things with guides, but like even with that, just like looking at hex code through like HXD or something like that, I'll look at some. I'm like, how the hell do people figure this out?
yeah, it's a lot of patterns.
Okay.
Eventually, you start to find patterns in the code, and you start to realize that okay, this chunk of code here is responsible for something. And again, right, it's different between every game. So in Dead Rising, the files are more or less readable. So everything you want to mess around with file wise is pretty much all XML. So it's totally readable, you know.
Hmm.
So,
Huh.
but
That's interesting. So I mean, if a game wanted to be more, I guess if more difficult to crack and reverse engineer, then obviously they wouldn't use that
hmm
format of
hmm
compression.
yeah.
Okay. And then so then again, I'm sure that one of the more difficult part of actually reverse engineering or unencrypting would be if you don't have any kind of software to actually interpret, then like you said, looking through the patterns, that's got to be very tedious.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. Um, one example is, you know, you could attack it at two ways. You can get someone who's, you know, I can't do this. I'm not an expert in coding. I don't know C++ like the back of my hand. But you can either pay someone or get someone to make a program that could take a specific file type and kind of reverse it back into readable format. If you don't have that option, all you're left with is a hex editor like HXD, and yeah, you know, just poking at it, you know, in tiny little bits and hoping that eventually you'll find some kind of pattern, and you more or less do. But oh yeah, like you said, it's tedious and it's not fun. When you find
No,
things, it's fun, but
yeah, I'm sure you feel like
you feel like
you're the
God.
man once you finally yeah
yeah.
yeah like I can see you just sitting there like I finally solved it, but like the time is when you're sitting there and you're just getting nowhere. You just kind of like beat your
Yeah.
head into the wall. It sounds yeah, that sounds that sounds rough.
Many
I'm
sleepless
definitely
nights.
not the most patient. Yeah, I'm definitely not the most patient person, so I don't know if that's something that I could actually do, but that's
hmm
crazy. So I mean, um, aside from again the whole Dead Rising or Halo again getting into it originally, and then Dead Rising becoming a thing you were into, um, just on a personal level, was there any prior interest that you had with either coding or modding or anything related to, I mean, that kind of thing, or not really? It was just something that you grew into from after the Halo modding.
it was something I grew into because Dead Rising was my favorite game, and I really, really wanted to do stuff with it. So I had no choice but to learn how to do advanced modding and stuff. So I had to teach myself how to do these things, and now I'm kind of into it. Now I'm interested in modding various games, but Dead Rising grew that, you know, like
Interest,
the
yeah.
yeah.
Got you, because you had such a appreciation or love for the game that
hmm
it made it
hmm
worth it. And now that you're in it, you're like, oh shit, let's see what else I can.
Yeah, let's see what I can do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome, man. No, that's really really cool. Because um, Mr. Meyer had mentioned it earlier, and I know me and him have talked about it quite a few times too. But like, we're both like extremely fascinated with the software side of things, and like I've briefly looked at it before I've said fuck this and exited out of the video, or just because I'm just like this is insane. There's just no way. But um, I definitely, as much as I enjoy making my tutorials and actually just for my personal use in installing
Right.
mod chips or whatever form of it's really cool to be able to take that. Okay, now it's unlocked, but if you just unlock something and you've got nobody like yourself or anyone else that's doing stuff like that, then who gives a shit? You know what I'm saying? It's like what you
hmm
do with the
hmm
unlocked console. It's at least 50%, if not more, of the equation. So I think that's badass that you actually do that. And
Yeah.
Chris, for me, it's been literally download the file that so and so created, plug it in, thank you for your work. Here's what it
It's
does.
it's
You
that's
know?
me that's me too. I'm guilty of
Yeah,
that.
Let
yeah.
someone do it
So
for you.
I mean, and again, it's not that necessarily that I don't want to be able to do it myself. It's just that everyone's got their own strengths and their weaknesses. You know what I'm
For
saying?
sure.
So, but yeah, that's wicked cool, dude. I really think that's awesome.
I mean,
Um,
I couldn't sit. Sorry. If you want to go
no, go
first.
for it. Go for it. No, no,
Okay.
no. You,
I couldn't do what you guys do, which is like mod consoles, and I'm not very good at soldering. It's not my skill set. So if I tried to do what you guys did, I would make a mess. I would kill a few motherboards, right? It's just not my thing. So we all got our thing, I guess.
To be honest, it's kind of one of those things like with like one, it's like, well, you're able to kind of like trade skills here and there. It's like, hey, you know how to modify games and hex edit and all that stuff. I know how to solder something to a board and make it
Hmm.
do magical stuff. But then even on top of that, it's like that's not going to be perfect either because like just how Daniel and I have, busted quite a few systems. I'm sure you yourself have also had many fatal
Oh
errors and
yeah.
crashes and everything.
Oh yeah.
yeah, well,
For
I mean,
sure.
that's the beauty of having like a modding community. I mean, although I don't even know we've talked about modding communities and how we feel about them and stuff like that. But
At
I'm
a
just
certain
saying at the
point it
same.
becomes as although I will say that there are like shout out to the 3ds scene, like I love those guys. It's good to the point there's so much stuff that's growing. I'm just like, yeah, no, I'll come back here in like a week because everything's gonna change.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm getting at with that is that it's cool in the community sense. If a community, like a modding community, works the way it's supposed to work, where everyone's not toxic towards each other, it's neat that people can, again, basically exchange their skill sets with each other and basically, hey, I can do the hardware thing, so here's my tutorial for you, and then hey, here's this, so I can do this for you, and everyone kind of attributes their skills into something that
Hmm.
then again you couldn't do without having the help of these other people. So that's cool. That's again essentially what the communities or forums are supposed to be for, is sharing and helping ideas, so that way everyone can grow together and we can
Right.
advance forward. So you know like you said too, I mean, it, maybe although would like to be able to do software, maybe that's just not my knack. You know what I'm saying? I can do what I
Yeah.
can do, and you can do what you can do. You can't be a jack of all trades. So basically is the bottom line.
For sure.
Now,
So
even STiPO, with what you've done and everything, like with what you've been working on, as you've essentially said, you kind of kickstarted in like the Dead Rising community, and you're what, like, would you say you're the lone member, or are you one of the few members, or what?
I think it would be fair to say I'm one of the few members because I got a couple people to go purchase a JTAG or an RGH, and they've done a couple things here and there. But I do think I'm the king of the hill when it comes to it, and I'm not trying to brag or anything. It's just I ignited the flame for the Dead Rising one modding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Because honestly, at its core, I mean, it is like a fascinating game. It's awesome, everything. And then you think of it, and it's like, well, I've seen like so many other obscure games get little trainers and patches and everything. Like, why isn't
Hmm.
this game getting any love?
For sure, yeah. I always wondered, uh, I saw one video where this guy he made his own trainer, and he was able to mod on the fly. You press the guide button in some combination, and you can get infinite ammo or something like that. And I thought that was really cool. Why is this the only one in existence? Why is there only one dude
Most
making this?
people's interest kind of stops there,
For
unfortunately.
sure, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you had to choose out of all of the mods and that you've messed with for Dead Rising, what is your favorite thing that you've done?
jeez, I've done so much with Dead Rising that I've it's like a gray area where I start to forget what I've even done. If it wasn't for the videos,
Because
I'm always doing something.
you're not really tapped out on Dead Rising, are you?
No, I
Okay.
wouldn't say so. It's the game that I could always come back to. It's funny because I don't really play Dead Rising. I mod Dead Rising, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand that.
Yes, it's just kind of weird. Like it's my favorite game, but I'm not playing it as much as I wish I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would like to answer what my favorite thing that I've done with Dead Rising is, and I can't really think of it because there's always something more interesting the next day. I always stumble
Yeah,
upon some value that does something even cooler.
gotcha. I just thought I'd ask if there was like one thing where just like you're sitting there and you're like, dude, this is badass. Like I'm, like this is awesome. Like I'm pumped on myself right now.
Actually, definitely the coolest thing I've found recently is I don't know if you guys have ever played Dead Rising, but the save system sucks. If you've ever
Yeah.
played it, yeah,
Yeah.
saving in a
Yeah.
bathroom, it's awful. And I actually found that there's a value that you could poke in the executable that actually triggers the save state, and you could save anywhere now.
Nice.
So
That's awesome.
yeah,
No,
so I think
that's
that's just
super
really cool
useful.
for sure.
especially with a survival game like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played the new one on Xbox One,
Mhm.
just for a little bit. But that's the exception. That's like my extend. I actually probably, I mean, on 360, all I have right now is like a Xenon Flash and a Xenon JTAG. Like I only kept the Xenon JTAG because it's like Old Faithful and it's like the OG and I love it. But I
Yeah.
should probably pick up a reliable, RGH or something like that, or a reliable console that I can RGH myself or whatever, and mess around with it a little bit because there's so many cool things that I have not done, in terms of like messing around with games and things like that, and that I'd really like to. Because I mean, the thing is, although the 360, I feel like is definitely old news per se. Like I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Xbox One's here, and the next, I mean, they're even talking about like 2.5s on these consoles now and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So well, whatever. But at the same time, even the original Xbox has like a shit like if you go on Craigslist right now, I don't know, in Canada I don't know what they got going on, but here if I go on Craigslist, type in original Xbox, there's still like a couple dudes just in my area within a driving distance that are currently modifying original Xboxes with like
Yeah.
XBMC and game, stuff like that. So although that's an old, it's an old ass console essentially at this point, there's still like it's still a lot of life in
Yep.
these things. I have
For
actually
sure.
got them of my own. So I would like to get a 360 because I think that it'd be fun to take some of these games where like, okay, you played through them on regular, now let's fuck with them,
Yeah.
and
Let's
just kind
fuck
of
them up.
take it. Exactly, exactly. Let's see how crazy we can make this game.
I,
So
I,
Yeah.
I will attest to the original Xbox thing because as we talked about before, I'm kind of reading to the audience for the first time. I've been messing with that quite a bit more, and it's fascinating with how it is. But you have to respect that a system from 2001 can put out a nice, clean HD signal. So yeah, it still has a lot of life to it,
Yeah.
even though it's now a 15-year-old console.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I actually I was gonna tell you, but I picked up two of them yesterday, and so I'm finally getting around to modding them. Like I attached a female USB port to the memory card slot, so that way I can copy over
Oh,
um,
nice! I had to make
the
my own cable with that. I don't have one internally.
yeah, no, that's what I did though. Like
Oh, when you said attach, I thought you like literally took out one of the controller ports and put in a USB port or something like that.
oh no
That would be cool as hell.
That would be cool.
no, no, I mean, I unscrewed the controller and basically desoldered one of the memory card slots, and then soldered in the female USB port.
That's not what I did. I actually took one of the breakaways and butchered it, and then put a female USB port to the other end.
One of the break.
The breakaways on the controllers. If
You
you,
put a female
Oh,
USB
yeah, okay.
port.
yeah. No, on like if you look at original Xbox controller right now, I'm gonna
Yeah,
talk.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying, that the part where it like literally disconnects right before the plug for the actual.
Yep. You could take
where it
one of
makes the
those.
console.
You could take one of those breakaway cables and cut it, and then cut up another like male to female USB cable, and then splice the
Solder
two
it up.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
No shit. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
No, I mean I
There's
haven't.
so many fucking ways to mod this thing. It is ridiculous, dude.
The only reason why I
Um,
did it is because I couldn't find my action replay or my memory card, and I was like, well, screw this. I'll just use a flash drive. It's fine. So now I have my old faithful here, where it's just this taped up, nasty looking cable right here, and on the other end it has a Sony flash drive, and I can just plug it in, load up all my soft mod files.
Badass, dude. No, that's fucking awesome. But like you said, dude, like with the whole original Xbox, like I'm literally gonna make this thing like my emulator thing, my fucking XBMC thing. I've got my custom clear case for it that I'm gonna be throwing on it with like a bunch of LEDs, and then that whole like Xbox logo on the top, like the round part in the middle. I'm actually gonna try to in CAD software design like a custom top part for that to replace it. But these things are old, but they're fucking badass. And like you said too, it looks fantastic on my HD TV, dude.
Yeah, dude,
It-
nice
like-
clean 720p signal on my TV. I got a 55-inch 4K TV out here, and I'm like, God damn, this looks nice.
Yeah, it's surprisingly unreal, like how good of a signal that this thing puts out, dude.
Yeah.
So and I can easily see myself dicking around with it, like on like Halo mods and stuff like that.
There's some things like I'm not gonna say them on here, at least because I don't want to spoil things, and also kind of get back on topic a little bit. But there's some stuff like we're both gonna be messing with the original Xbox at the same time then. But like it is a fascinating system.
There's so much stuff
It's,
you can do.
it's
dude.
so cheap too. You can pick one up for like tops $40 at this point.
I picked up two for 15.
Nice. Did you go to a
Yeah,
swap
dude.
meet for that?
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Yeah, they look like absolute fuck, dude. Like I actually made a pickup video that's already uploaded. It just hasn't gone live yet, and they look terrible, dude. Like I'm pretty sure someone ran them over with a car and like threw it out their window.
Does it
But
have like nasty like brown crust all over it and everything? Like somebody kind of just like threw up and then it dried out for a few days.
tons of it, dude.
Oh God.
No, it looks. I'm telling you, it is one of these consoles. Both of them were from the same seller, and they are some of the worst looking consoles that I picked up from a swap meet. And the only reason why I did was because I've got a replacement. I've got a replacement case, and I know that these things are fucking tanks. Like, just pick one up. They're
These things
fucking
are
tanks, dude.
destructive.
Yeah, they're crazy, and so I figured whatever, dude. If I can get both for 15, like chances are one of these sons of bitches is gonna work, and they both work fine. So whatever.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey Daniel,
Yeah,
I dare you on ModChat to lick one of them.
I'm not gonna lick one of these, dude.
Okay.
Fuck that. Dude, no way. Like, if it was on video, like, maybe I'd do it for that reasoning, but, like, I'm not gonna lick one and have, like, no one at least see it, you know what I'm saying? My mom's gonna walk in here, dude, and just be like, hey, son, I know you're recording.
Why are
What
you
the
tonguing
fuck?
the Xbox?
Like, hey, don't ask questions you don't want answers to.
For ModChat, mom.
Exactly. Yeah, I need to do it for
Do it.
likes.
Uh,
Yeah, so I guess with that as well too, because we talked about the 360 quite a bit, and even the original Xbox. But STiPO, I know you've messed primarily with 360, but things a lot of people ask as well too, and they see all these console mods, like why don't you do that on PC, or why don't you do that on like another platform? Like, have you messed with any other platforms? And also, like, why wouldn't you do that stuff on PC? Why just kind of limited on Xbox right now?
Well, mainly all my favorite games are on 360,
Mm-hmm.
right? So until a perfect emulator for PC comes around, where no hitches and it runs 360 games perfectly, until that happens, 360 is my I have no choice, and that kind of made me fall in love with the 360, and that's why I spend money on dev kits and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really touch any PC games because I kind of like a challenge, and I don't want to upset anyone because there are some PC games that are heavily, locked down and you can't really get into it. But for the most part, PC games, everyone, you don't need a dev kit PC. You just need a PC, right? You could just open up the folder and find all the files you need. Everything's there for you.
Right.
So I kind of like a challenge where you need to have a modified system. You have to understand this modified system. You have to have all these tools. I just kind of find it cool in a sense.
Mm-hmm. No, and I could sympathize with that. And Daniel, I think you kind
Mhm.
of agree with that too.
yeah, the challenge is fun.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating doing something like that on like a closed source, closed down system. It's like, hey, look, I can
Something
do
you
all this
shouldn't
stuff.
do.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's way more rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
definitely more rewarding.
yeah. Now I know you've also messed with like alphas and betas and everything as well too. And I guess how did that come about with it all? And like your fascination with the Dead Rising alphas and betas? Because I know recently I've seen you've done more modifications to the retail game. But when I first found your channel, I was actually looking up Grand Theft Auto 3 beta footage and like alphas and things like that. Because that's actually I haven't messed with it, but that's my all-time favorite game. So the stuff like that was taken out was fascinating to me. And somehow I stumbled upon Dead Rising, beta stuff. And
Yeah.
that's where it kind of evolved from there. But I guess what's kind of been your drawn fascination with that?
My fascination with the beta of Dead Rising, and I'll get into a little bit of betas for other games, but
Mm-hmm.
my fascination with Dead Rising's betas and alphas is that they just looked cooler than the final game, and it kind of struck a bone with me. It literally angered me that there were some things in early footage that were so much cooler. The lighting was darker, shit looked cooler, and we didn't get it in the final game, and it's like, why would you do that? So I have a 360 that can kind of bring back some of this shit. I can kind of modify this stuff. So that's what I do. I kind of bring back the stuff that I found cooler in the older versions of the game. You know what I mean? So yeah.
No, I gotcha. Like with you kind of mentioned with other games as well too. Has there been anything else that you've really messed with, or I guess kind of in the alpha and beta scene? Because I got into that recently, like looking at prototypes of games and everything, and it is fascinating seeing what's available.
Oh
in
yeah.
there.
Yeah, it stemmed from Dead Rising, and it made me realize that there's some games that have really fascinating betas and alphas. And for instance, I mean, geez, Halo. Halo has some really interesting, like a beta history. Call of Duty has a really interesting like alpha state where the game didn't look anything like it was going to be, for the final game. There's a lot of games that, if you're a big fan of a certain game, chances are it has footage online of like an earlier state of it, and it probably had some cooler things that you never got in the final game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's always neat seeing that as well too. Where like you'll see it with I think like I know Duke Nukem Forever, not a good game, but we publicly saw like 5 different revisions of it.
For sure.
And
For
then I
sure.
know one of my all-time favorite games as well too. It was an unreleased PS1 game called Thrill Kill, and it was a 4-player bloody Dante's Inferno type hell cage battle game. And it originally started as I think a 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 Mayan basketball game.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What?
Jeez.
What the fuck?
Yeah, now there's nothing
Crazy.
like there's no footage of it because I mean this game was from the late '90s and that was so early in development they didn't bother to capture any footage of it. But no, one of the developers, I remember he went on to a podcast a while ago and he said he's like actually that wasn't even our intention at the time. We were doing a 2-on-2 which to my knowledge I still don't even think there's a Mayan basketball video game out now.
It needs to happen.
It needs to happen.
happen.
Well, it turned into Thrill Kill, so my hope is that it starts again, and then we'll get like Thrill Kill Remastered or Thrill Kill Redux or something like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, even I guess really with this as well too, because I think we're kind of getting to near the end, wrapping up and all that. That's kind of what it feels like with everything on it, because I know you've been really chronicalizing, all the alpha, beta builds, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
What's just been the most like shocking to you on that, just looking into it? Because I know when we had Borman on here before, he was saying that he's been archiving all these games and such because people just throw them away, they don't care, nothing was being documented, and it not only goes into software, it goes in like hardware as well too, where like there's for example like dev kits that when they're decommissioned they're just thrown out or sent over to be disposed of or anything like that, and that's valuable hardware right there, but they don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's disgusting what companies do with, their early assets. Some companies, you'll find that they have like a vault. They call it their vault, and it's quite literally just a room full of discs and press assets that they that didn't make it into the final game, but like Tokyo Game Show discs and E3 discs, and it's amazing to see a company preserve that because it has so much content on those discs that that we'll never get to see. And one day they could surface. One day the company can go bankrupt and everything will be put in an auction and we get to finally get our hands on all those goodies. But some companies, I mean, even Microsoft with the 360, some companies, they throw out all this stuff. They just think it's garbage, that's crap. And all their history is gone. Just like that, all their history is gone. Mm-hmm. So I just find it terrible.
Mm-hmm. I know, go ahead.
I was gonna say I just don't see what the gain is. If they're done with it and they're done making their profit off of it, then why not, give it to the people?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that would one either pay a lot of money for it or two have a great appreciation for the company. Which I mean, again, the company, although Microsoft is such a big company that I'm sure individual voices don't mean jack shit, but at the same time, it's like why not do something that isn't going to hurt you, isn't going to be a loss of profit that at the same time will give a certain community of people an appreciation and love for that company.
Right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me why they instead just decide to, burn it all to the ground, basically.
Mm-hmm. And it either, kind of walks out or gets into different people's hands or like somebody who might not know what they're doing, anything like that. Or just like, for example, I had told someone about this recently, but I had seen I'd seen a video like a few years ago where like the original Xbox dev kits, like the DVT3s or 4s, something like that. Sometime after the 360 came out, at Microsoft, they were done with them. So they pretty much rounded up like kind of the last their dev kits and put them in a pile. And they're like, hey, if anybody wants these, there's garbage here. So I don't think they threw any away, but they just kind of eventually, like there was a pile, like let's say 20 dev kits there, which, are valuable and everything. And eventually, people just kind of took them home and all that. So the reason why I even heard about this was because there was one person who got a hold of one and he said, yeah, no, Microsoft was just kind of giving these out because they didn't want them and they were useless. And a buddy of mine worked there, so he took one and gave it to me.
Jeez.
Yeah, how lucky do you get with that?
Right?
Yeah.
right place, right time, I guess, man.
Yeah, for
Exactly,
sure.
or just knowing the proper people, anything like that. One common thing I've seen is if you're in the Washington area, especially Redmond, like you go to like thrift shops and used game stores and garage sales and all that, you'll see assets from Microsoft at
Oh
these
yeah.
places.
Oh yeah. It's the hub for like old development kit hardware and like test wires and stuff. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, even I know a few years ago that orange Xbox got out,
For
and
sure. Yeah.
that was just at a that was at a garage sale for like 40,
That
50
was at a
bucks, something
garage
like
sale.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, even with it too, like even the person who bought it, like I was thinking the same as him too. Like I would have looked at it and been like, oh, that's just an Xbox with a custom orange case. Okay, it's probably soft mod. It has a few games on it. It's like, no, that is a extremely rare Xbox that was not supposed to leave the company.
That's why we're so grateful for Assembler Games, because if you're ever curious about something, just post it up, and you'd be surprised. Maybe it is rare, and you'd be pretty grateful that you actually posted it on Assembler Games instead of chucking it in your closet and not
Shit.
saying anything.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because the people there know, they've got a lot of
Yeah.
insight on what things are and what they're worth and what to do with them. So I actually really like watching. Assembler has a YouTube channel where he, like, I don't know if
Mhm.
I don't think all the stuff's his. I think some of the stuff is like members of the community that basically loan it to him to basically be made videos of. But
Yeah.
some of the hardware is absolutely just amazing, like just beautiful looking and stuff that like wow, that is like crazy, like how different this looks from the final thing, or just like the internals or the amount of the specs and the actual hardware itself. Like it's I love watching that stuff. Like I for a while would just go through every single video, just kind of seeing like all the different hardware that they had that was developer or beta or test kits or anything like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that stuff's insane. Okay, I have a random question that surfaced. When it comes to your Xbox 360 modding, at this point where you have the ability to basically RGH and RJ tag like pretty much like everything, and you can install the dev like overlay or dev
RG
to
loader.
execute. There you go, RG loader to it.
There you go.
How? Yeah, it's been so long, man. But how much of a difference does it make between having a true dev kit in terms of things you want to do and just having one of those? Like I know that dev kits, for example, I believe you can do like real time modding, correct? Like in real
Mhm.
time. So
Yep.
I'm sure that's one. I know that with the oh God, what else is there? There's I know that they have some of them have better specs, don't they? Like the sidecars have additional RAM.
The RAM is actually in the console, but yeah, some dev kits have like Mr. Mario's new brand new toy. It has a gig of RAM instead
Hello.
of 512.
Yeah. So I know that there's things like that, but other than like those two things, what would be like what are the limitations that you'd have with the RG loader versus the true dev kit?
Well, you see, the thing is RG Loader is quite simply the dev kit NAND that they've just made work for retail. So, in retrospect, it's quite simply the same thing. However, the biggest benefit about a dev kit is a dev kit will always be a real dev kit. If you remove the hard drive off of your JTAG, if you have RG Loader flash to it, the console won't boot because you need certain files on the hard drive and whatnot. And also, if it's a mod chip or something, I've explained this in that previous video that I made, but the mod chip could fail, your JTAG wiring could come undone or something. And a real dev kit's never really going to fail you, if that makes any sense. A dev kit's always going to be a dev kit. So if you have to reflash it or something, it's going to be a dev kit again. It's never going to, it's always a development kit. Whereas a JTAG, you can have some issues going back, but in terms of what one can do that the other can't, there actually isn't really anything. They're both essentially, once you flash a JTAG, they're both real dev kits in a sense.
Got you.
Yeah.
So ultimately, then it's just that having something that's stock intended to do this way, it's a more of a reliable thing
Reliable,
than yeah, versus something that you modified. Which again, not that there's not reliable modding at all by any means,
For
but
sure.
just at the same time, like you said too, there are things that can go wrong with an RGH or JTAG or RJ tag that cannot go wrong with the dev kit because they don't have that, because they don't need that, because they have been and always will be this.
That's how it's been
Absolutely.
made. It's not an exploit on a retail console.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It left the factory being a development kit,
Exactly. Yeah, it was
Okay.
born this
So
way.
You were birthed into this world for one reason. Got you. No, that totally makes sense then. Okay. I just was curious if there was anything else truly.
Plus, it's kind of a mindfuck type thing. Can't you use a recovery disk to recover a dev kit to retail?
Yeah,
Okay.
you
I,
could.
I heard about that recently. So it's like, well, if you want
Yeah.
to, you could go the opposite way.
That's actually kind of scary because if you kind of brick your development kit, or you're messing around and you got to recover it. If you actually accidentally press the wrong button, you can recover your kit as a retail, and that's not going to be a good day. So it's kind of scary.
Just a
Is
bit.
there a way back from that or no?
I think it blows your fuse sets in the CPU, so it's basically like it's stuck. You can't go
Uh,
back. Yeah.
Oh.
well, because there was a website back in the day, like probably I don't know 4ish, maybe even 5 years ago, and this website was ran by like a couple people that, from what I remember, were just like toxic and they really frowned upon in the community. And it was just like a dev kit website, exclusively a dev kit website. And there was a lot of information on there about like getting onto PartnerNet and
Mhm.
shit like that. And I remember that somebody on that website released a recovery that was literally just to fuck you. Like the recovery blew your
Oh
fuses on
yeah,
your.
yeah. I know
Do
what you're
you
talking about.
yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago, but I remember like it was a huge scare because like when I had my test kit, I wanted to like update the recovery because I heard that you can make a test kit into a full dev kit. Like they're basically set up the same, and all you have to do is,
Hmm.
I believe, flash a
Just
proper recovery,
reflash.
and
Yeah.
exactly. And so I was like completely just nerve wracked because I had seen this, and it had happened to quite a few people. It wasn't like a one case type thing, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty scary, man. I do you remember the name of that website? It was like XE Dev or like or XEK or it was some man.
I
I
went
don't think
on
it
it, but
exists anymore.
it doesn't exist anymore. I think it was called Tor XDK, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, the community just kind of died off. Yeah, there was a lot of shit going around like that. One of the most malicious and scary things was and it was done to an executable. So you could give someone a game and say like, hey man, check out this new beta build I found. And instead of the actual executable, you can have the bricking executable loaded on. So as soon as someone runs this executable, it nulls the CPU's fuse sets to FFF completely, and that kit is fucked. Like that kit's never turning back on. So it's
Dude.
always really scary to run executables these days. I
Yeah.
actually own the executable, this bricking executable. I keep it in a RAR file because it's so scary.
Yeah. You're like, I don't even trust you. I don't want you unzipped.
At
That's
least that way, if it ever
hilarious.
accidentally gets on your Xbox, you can't run it because the Xbox can't open RARs.
No, sir.
Unless it maybe can. I
Hilarious.
don't know. But yeah. No, one last thing I was actually going to ask. STiPO, do you, your X and A kit, does that have a gig of RAM or is it 512?
It has a gig of RAM.
Okay, I want to ask you this because I'm legitimately curious, and somebody actually on my video, they asked me this question, and I didn't really know how to answer it because, like, from the computer world, I would say yes, but I'm like, well, I don't know, honestly.
Mhm.
The 1 gig of RAM, does that increase performance, or does it have any substantial upgrade and impact on the games themselves when you're just playing them?
Um, it actually has no impact at all, and the only way you're going to actually find a difference in this 1 gig is if a beta build is set up to use the 1 gig. There's some kind of extension you could add to your executable that takes usage of the 1 gig. So you could be running 1 gig mode all the time, like I do. I have 1 gig on always because why not, right? But you won't notice any impact unless you're running a beta build that's been set up to use 1024 megabytes of RAM. You'll never notice a difference.
And that's what
So,
I thought because that's why I kind of said maybe too when I was thinking about it because I
mhm.
was like, well, at first, like my first instinct would be yes, but I thought I'd heard something like that before, and I was like, well, even thinking about it, when these games are crafted, they're made to run on consoles. The 360 with 512
Yeah.
megabytes, so that
Mhm.
would make more sense.
Microsoft actually released in their XNA preview thing. They actually told developers not to use the 1 gig, and if they had a really CPU and RAM intensive game, then they wouldn't really have any room for debugging the game. So that's where the extra RAM came in. So in a game like Gears of War 3, I think that game in its early states used all the RAM on these XNA kits, and the reason for that is it's already such a big, intensive game. So when they were debugging it, they were strapped for memory. They couldn't do anything. The game was locking up. They couldn't do shit all. So this extra 512 allowed them to run the game smoothly and run their debug stuff.
Gotcha. And that's what I thought with that as well too. But even with that, then if you get one of those early builds, it's probably not going to do that well even with the 1 gig because it's an alpha or beta.
For sure.
Yep. Anyways, I think Daniel, you got any more questions, concerns, anything like that?
Not off the top of my head. I think I'm pretty. Oh, okay. I have one more. It's just directed to just for STiPO basically.
Go ahead.
After the stuff that you've gotten yourself into with console modding and game modding, do you see yourself doing something like this career wise, or like is this something that you want to go for now, like the programming field or something like that, or not really?
Maybe. I do find this a little tedious, and I couldn't really see myself in a hot summer's day working, on a computer all day.
Yeah.
If the payroll was good, then fine, but it's very tedious work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
no, I can understand.
I don't know. It takes a mindset of you really got to love computers and stuff, and it's got to be your absolute passion to kind of make it a career. And I don't really see that in myself. I think it's just a hobby. So
yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. I just was curious because again, like I've always been into computers and stuff like that, but I'm trying to go to school for basically engineering now because I've got so into design and modeling and customization and stuff like that. So
wow.
for me, it definitely like this whole everything like completely changed my direction I'm going with my whole life. So I was wondering whether similarly for you or whether not the same but again like the hobby thing, I can definitely understand how coding or doing what you're doing, it takes a lot of brain power, and so to do that all day 5 days a week or whatever, 6 days a week for crazy amounts of hours, it definitely takes a certain type of human being.
For sure. Yeah.
Many of those people.
Congrats on one of pursuing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks. Well, I gotta say, no, most of those people, like the hardcore coders and all that, they're not gonna be humans. They're inhuman.
Yeah,
you gotta talk to them in machine language.
Well, my uncle, dude, has been a programmer for, I want to say 25, 30 years. He's a software and hardware engineer, extremely successful, and he's just a really smart fucking guy. But when I see him, dude, like he tells me that he literally sometimes will just see things in like code. He'll be working on a project all night long. He works his his day shift, goes home, and then works he does his own side thing where he's doing design, and it just seems like exhausting. And again, even him, like he's so good at it all, but even I can tell there's days where he just wants to blow the fucking computer up or something. It's just, it's not that every job doesn't have its day, but it's definitely something that requires so much fucking patience and attention to detail and brain power. So I don't know. I can understand why, again, you'd want to do it just as a fun thing versus like, fuck, I have to do this to put bread on the table,
Right.
So,
but
it does make sense.
But I'll say this to that. Sometimes it would just make you laugh because it's like, for example, one of my good friends, he's a software engineer and he works for a pretty good company. He codes all day and everything. And he also does that, sometimes he'll stay up until like 12 or 1 in the morning working on his own projects. But when I went to visit him, he ended up setting up a bunch of Christmas lights and he coded up a program for his Christmas lights. I mean,
awesome.
Shit like that I'm like, cool. That is hilarious and that is so useful. And I was actually envious too because I'm like, man, I wish I had your skill set. He's like, yeah, I mean, it's cool, but it's rough around the edges. And I stayed up until about 3 in the morning working on this. So that wasn't cool.
Yeah. Well,
I don't. Go ahead.
Well, it's just it's stuff like that's badass, dude. And like even with like that's why I'm trying to get into like the whole design thing because it's cool. Like with the printer thing, like I can build printers now. Yeah, I can customize them and like calibrate them. But other than just being able to print out other people's shit, I wanted it to be like, hey, I could use this kind of crazy looking device hinge thing that doesn't exist right now. Bam, give me 12 hours of sitting here like a tweaker, and I can have it in front of me. So it's like that's pretty badass, dude. Being able to do stuff like that that's not already existing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways,
I just one last thing is that I find it a hobby and not a pursue for a career because when I'm working on something really late in the night on Dead Rising or something, when I go to bed, I just have like these images of just assembly code running through my brain and I just can't turn it off. Like it really tires you out, it's exhausting, on the brain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a bitch.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could be physically tired and all that, and that's, that
Yeah,
sucks. But if you're mentally tired, your brain controls your body. You can't use your body.
for sure.
No, no, I sometimes when I'm working on projects too, all night long, um, it's exhausting, and I get like really bad anxiety from it, man. Where I'm like tossing and turning, and all you want to do is fucking go to sleep, but all I can think of is like projects and ideas. Like the brain, it's like a hamster on a wheel, dude. And like once the hamster's running, the fucking wheel just doesn't stop.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So I can completely understand that, man. And it's a lot, dude. Like this, it
it's a
really is a
lot.
lot, man.
Yeah,
So, but we do it.
we do it. Hey,
Yeah.
we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
free Gucci. Anyways, I think we're kind of wrapping up here and everything. So, with everything, with that, STiPO, is there anything you want to plug? Where can we find you on the internet?
Well, you could either find me on Assembler Games lurking around late at night, or on my YouTube channel, just messing around with Dead Rising. YouTube/STiPO.
All right, and we'll make sure we'll have a link for your channel in the description, and everything. If you're watching this on YouTube, and if you are, thank you for that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Daniel, what about you? Where can we find you at?
find me in the club. No, I'm just kidding.
Popping bottles.
Yeah, no. If you find me on YouTube, youtube.com/dopeswanner. Primarily, that's where you can find me, or on ModChat with Mr. Mario. So that's really it.
I guess that works. I guess with me, you'll mostly find me on YouTube, which youtube.com/Mr. Mario 2011, and sometimes I'll be lurk around other places, but for the most part, I'll be publicly on here. But anyways, if you finished listening to this, thank you very much, and we have a few outlets available as well too. We're available, on iTunes, on Podbean. We have a Facebook page as well too, all with the name ModChat, and of course, we're uploading this to YouTube as well too. So if you are listening to this on YouTube / watching it, let us know what you thought. Any suggestions, thoughts, feedback, anything like that, please drop them down below in the description. Daniel and STiPO, they'll also be available, in the description as well too, so you can check them out.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to definitely say, which we did say I think earlier, but thank you a lot.
It's okay, we're almost done.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, STiPO. It's always fun having a guest on the show, and I definitely think it's really cool the stuff that you're doing. And I definitely will say that if I ever get some downtime and I get around to some kind of game modding, whether it's Halo or something else, that I might have some questions for you. So definitely just, I don't know, keep up the good work, and thanks again for coming on, hanging out with us, and dealing with us for an hour.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. It was really fun being here. So thanks for having me on board.
Hey, no problem. I might be in the same camp for Hope too.
No problem.
Yeah, anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone.